not bad. 25th birthday felt different. Not scary. Not heavy. It's just real. Happy birthday, Mina.
Every life has a turning point. This story begins at one of them. Mina Johnson had promised herself one thing on her 25th birthday. No stress, no drama, no loud expectations. Just peace. That promise was the reason she stood inside a quiet boutique grocery store in Savannah, Georgia, carefully choosing a bottle of red wine while soft music floated from hidden speakers above. The store smelled like vanilla candles and fresh bread, the kind of place that made you slow down without realizing it. Her birthday wasn't about luxury or noise. It was about comfort. A small gathering. Her aunt, 2 cousins, 3 close friends who had known her since college. A cake, laughter, maybe a little dancing in the living room when the wine loosened everyone up. That was enough. She tilted the wine bottle slightly, reading the label, her curls brushing her cheeks as she smiled to herself. 25 felt different, not scary. Not heavy, just real. She was learning who she was, learning what she wanted, learning what she refused to tolerate anymore. She placed the bottle into her cart beside a neatly boxed chocolate cake decorated with soft gold lettering. Happy birthday, Mina. Her lips curved upward. Not bad, she whispered. Mina paid at the register, wished the cashier a good evening, and pushed her cart out into the warm Georgia air. The sun was beginning to dip low, staining the sky orange and pink. The parking lot hummed with distant traffic, car doors opening and closing, people lost in their own lives. She didn't know that 2 rows away, a man was fighting a war he never asked for. Joon-ha Kim had not slept properly in 3 nights. Jet lag clung to him like a second skin, but it wasn't exhaustion that weighed him down. It was expectation, pressure. The suffocating sense that his life was no longer his own. He stood beside a sleek black SUV, grocery bag hanging loosely in one hand, phone pressed tightly to his ear with the other. His jaw was clenched so hard it ached. You are being selfish. His grandmother's voice snapped through the line, sharp and unwavering despite her age. Running away to America will not change your responsibility. I didn't run away, Joon-ha said, lowering his voice but failing to hide the frustration beneath it. I came for business, and I stayed because I needed space. Space? She scoffed. Your engagement party is already being planned. That word, engagement, made his chest tighten. I never agreed to that, he said firmly. I never asked you to plan my life like a contract merger. Silence followed. Dangerous silence. Then calmly his grandmother spoke. You will marry the woman I chose. Our family's business relationship depends on it. I am not a damaged product that needs to be merged with another company, Joon-ha snapped. I am not handicapped. I can find love on my own. Love is a luxury, she replied. Stability is reality. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his forehead as the sun glinted off the hood of his car. My birthday is in 2 days. I don't want a party. I don't want an engagement announcement. I want to think. You will return to Seoul immediately, she said, voice hardening. Or I will reconsider your inheritance. His steps slowed. What? He asked. You heard me. Anger flared. Disbelief. Hurt. You would take everything away because I refused to marry a stranger? Yes, she answered without hesitation. If that is what it takes to remind you who you are. He turned sharply, not watching where he was going. And that was when it happened. The collision was sudden, brutal, loud. The grocery bag slipped from Joon-ha's hand. Mina's cart jolted forward. Glass shattered. Red liquid exploded across the pavement. The sound echoed in the open space like a gunshot. Oh my gosh! Mina exclaimed instinctively, her heart jumping into her throat. Her cake slid from the cart, hitting the ground with a soft but devastating thud. The box tipped open. Frosting smeared. The carefully written lettering disappeared beneath the weight of gravity. Wine bled into the cracks of the asphalt. For a moment the world stopped. Joon-ha froze, phone still pressed to his ear. His grandmother's voice faintly calling his name from the other side. Joon-ha, his grandmother repeated, but he didn't hear her clearly. All he could see was the woman standing in front of him. She stared at the ground, lips parted, eyes locked on the ruins of what had been her birthday evening. Her shoulders were stiff. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Joon-ha swallowed hard. His voice caught. I'm so sorry. Mina didn't scream. She didn't curse. She didn't accuse. She simply stood there, dumbfounded, angry yes but not aggressive, hurt but controlled, as if she were choosing, very deliberately, not to let the moment swallow her. I'm really sorry, he said again, quickly pulling the phone away from his ear and ending the call without a word. I wasn't looking. I was distracted. Please, let me replace everything. She looked up at him then. He was tall, well-dressed even casually, handsome in a quiet, refined way, sharp jawline, tired eyes that carried something heavy beneath them. But none of that mattered to her in that moment. She looked at him as a human being who had made a mistake. It was an accident, she said calmly. You didn't mean to. I know, but still. It's okay, she repeated, surprising even herself with how steady her voice sounded. Joon-ha blinked. You don't want me to pay? He asked carefully. She shook her head. No, I can sort it out. That stunned him. In his world, accidents were unacceptable. Mistakes came with consequences. Money solved everything, or at least pretended to. Yet here was a woman whose birthday had literally shattered at her feet, and she wasn't demanding anything. Mina bent down, carefully lifting what remained of the cake box, her expression unreadable. She sighed softly, then glanced around. Excuse me, she called out, catching the attention of a nearby cleaner. Could you help with the glass, please? Joon-ha watched in silence as the cleaner nodded and approached with a broom. Mina straightened, brushed her hands against her jeans, and met his eyes once more. Have a good evening, she said simply, and then she turned and walked back toward the mall entrance. Just like that. No anger, no lecture, no guilt. Joon-ha stood rooted to the spot, watching her disappear through the sliding doors, something unfamiliar blooming quietly in his chest. Confusion, respect, curiosity. The cleaner swept up the broken glass. The red stain faded into the pavement. The moment ended. But whatever Mina had left behind inside him did not. For the first time in a long while, Joon-ha forgot about his inheritance, his grandmother, and the life waiting to cage him back in Korea. All he could think about was a woman whose birthday he had ruined, and who had walked away with more grace than anyone he had ever known. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet voice whispered, this was not the end. Mina drove home with both hands firmly on the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road but her mind miles away. The cake sat carefully secured on the passenger seat, buckled in like a fragile passenger that had already survived one near-death experience. The new bottle of wine rested on the floor behind it, wrapped snugly in a grocery bag. She exhaled slowly. What a birthday, she muttered. The image of shattered glass and red wine staining concrete replayed in her mind, followed by the unexpected calm that had come over her afterward. She wasn't proud of how numb she'd felt, but she wasn't ashamed either. Life happened, and today had decided to remind her of that early. Still, she couldn't shake the man's face from her thoughts. The Korean man, the way he had frozen, the way his apology sounded real, the way his eyes looked like they were carrying a storm he hadn't caused. She shook her head lightly, as if that could physically shake him from her thoughts. Stranger, she reminded herself, just a stranger. By the time she reached her cousin Naomi's house, the sky had deepened into a soft evening blue. Cars already lined the street, familiar ones. Family, friends, comfort. Mina grabbed the cake carefully, lifted the wine, and stepped out of the car. The moment she walked inside, the noise wrapped around her like a blanket. Happy birthday, birthday girl. Mina, she smiled, a real one this time, as arms pulled her into hugs. Naomi beamed at her from across the living room. You made it. Barely? Mina laughed, lifting the cake slightly. Long story. Naomi took the cake from her carefully. Kitchen. Go breathe. Mina exhaled in gratitude and slipped out of her shoes. She didn't know that across town, Joon-ha was having a very different kind of evening. Joon-ha sat in the passenger seat of a sleek car, staring out the window as Savannah passed by in a blur of streetlights and quiet neighborhoods. "You need to relax," Daniel said, glancing at him briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "You look like you're about to negotiate a hostile takeover instead of attending a small family gathering." Joon-ha scoffed softly. "You kidnapped me." Daniel laughed. "I rescued you. You were spiraling." Daniel, Mina's cousin, had been Joon-ha's business partner and friend for over 3 years. They met through an international logistics deal, but their relationship had grown beyond contracts and boardrooms. Daniel understood pressure. He understood family expectations. And he understood when someone needed to breathe. "It's my cousin's place," Daniel continued. "Nothing fancy. Just food, music, people who won't ask you about mergers or marriage." Joon-ha rubbed his jaw. "I don't want to intrude." "You won't," Daniel said. "Besides, it's her birthday. Good energy." Birthday. The word stirred something in Joon-ha's chest. An image of broken cake and red wine bleeding into pavement flashed through his mind. He frowned slightly. "All right," he said. "Just for a bit." Mina was in the kitchen helping Naomi arrange plates when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Naomi said, wiping her hands. Mina stayed back, carefully cutting the cake box open, checking, thankfully, that it had survived the second trip. She heard voices near the entrance. Laughter. A familiar male voice she didn't recognize. Then footsteps. Then silence. A strange, charged silence. Mina looked up and froze. The man standing in the living room, tall, familiar, unmistakable, was the same man from the parking lot. Their eyes met. Shock rippled through both of them. Joon-ha stopped mid-step. Mina's hand tightened instinctively on the knife she was holding. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. "You?" they said at the same time. Daniel blinked. "Wait. You two know each other?" Mina broke eye contact first, her heart suddenly racing. "We ran into each other. Literally." Joon-ha cleared his throat. "Earlier today." Daniel's eyes widened, then slowly filled with amusement. "No way." Mina set the knife down carefully. "You're Naomi's guest? And you're Daniel's cousin?" Joon-ha replied, disbelief lacing his voice. The room felt smaller, warmer, charged with coincidence too precise to be accidental. "Well," Daniel said, clapping his hands together, clearly entertained. "This just got interesting." Mina let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "So this is the part where fate pretends it didn't plan this." Joon-ha's lips curved into a faint smile. "It's doing a poor job." The tension eased slightly. Naomi approached, curiosity written all over her face. "Someone explain." Mina gestured vaguely. "Parking lot, broken wine, broken cake, birthday trauma." Naomi gasped. "Wait, that was you?" Joon-ha bowed his head slightly. "I'm still very sorry." Naomi laughed. "Well, you survived long enough to make it here. That counts." As the evening unfolded, conversation flowed easier than Mina expected. Joon-ha stayed close, not crowding her, not distant either. Just present. They talked in fragments. Shared glances. Soft laughter. At one point, Mina caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Instead of discomfort, she felt warmth. Later, as candles were lit and the room dimmed, Mina stood before the cake. Her cake, surrounded by people who loved her. She closed her eyes, and without knowing why, she made a wish that felt dangerous. When she opened them, Joon-ha was watching her. Not like a stranger anymore, but like someone standing at the edge of something new. Something neither of them had planned. Something neither of them was ready to walk away from. The living room glowed with soft yellow light, the kind that made everything feel warmer than it actually was. Music played quietly in the background. Old-school R&B mixed with soft Afrobeats, and laughter rose and fell like a gentle tide. Mina stood near the kitchen island, a plate in her hand, nodding along as her aunt told a story she had heard at least 5 times before. She smiled when appropriate, laughed when expected, but her awareness kept drifting, uninvited, toward the other side of the room. Toward him. Joon-ha leaned against the wall beside Daniel, listening more than speaking, his posture relaxed but alert, like someone who was never completely at ease in unfamiliar spaces. He looked different here, softer than the man she'd met in the parking lot, less tense than the stranger who had frozen over broken glass. Yet every now and then their eyes met. Each time, something quiet passed between them. Not flirtation. Not yet. Something more curious. More cautious. Like two people standing on opposite sides of a bridge, aware that crossing it would change something important. Mina turned her attention back to her plate, trying to ignore the subtle pull in her chest. It made no sense. She didn't even know him. Joon-ha felt out of place but not unwelcome. That difference mattered. Daniel had been right. No one here asked him what company he owned, what deals he was closing, or when he planned to marry. They treated him like a person, not a headline. But the real distraction was Mina. She moved through the room with an ease that fascinated him. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress. She laughed freely, spoke honestly, and listened fully. A rare combination he hadn't realized he missed until now. At one point, she caught him looking. Instead of looking away, she raised an eyebrow slightly, amused. He cleared his throat and shifted his weight, pretending to focus on the conversation around him. Daniel leaned closer. "You're thinking too loud." Joon-ha glanced at him. "What?" Daniel smirked. "Relax. You're among friends." Friends. The word echoed unexpectedly. Later, as the party mellowed and conversations split into smaller clusters, Mina slipped outside onto the back porch, needing air. The night was warm. Crickets sang softly. The distant hum of the city felt far away. She rested her hands on the wooden railing and exhaled. "Escaping your own party?" a voice asked gently. She turned. Joon-ha stood a few steps behind her, hands in his pockets, giving her space. "Just borrowing a moment," she replied. He nodded. "I do that too." Silence settled between them, not awkward, just open. "I didn't expect to see you again today," Mina said eventually. "Neither did I," he admitted. "I thought fate was done with me after the parking lot." She smiled faintly. Apparently not. They stood side by side now, looking out into the dark. "Daniel told me it's your birthday," he said. "Again, happy birthday." "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "Your timing was memorable." He chuckled softly. "That's one word for it." Another pause. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "What were you arguing about on the phone?" He stiffened slightly, then relaxed. "My grandmother," he said. "She wants to control my future." Mina nodded slowly. "That's a heavy thing to carry." "She thinks love is optional," he continued quietly. "I don't." Mina turned toward him then, studying his face in the porch light. "That makes two of us." He met her gaze. "You believe in choosing?" "I believe in consent," she replied. "In wanting someone, not being handed them." Something in his expression softened. "My birthday is in 2 days," he said after a moment. "There's a party waiting for me back home. An engagement announcement. A life already planned." "And you ran," she said gently. "Yes." She considered him for a moment, then said, "Running doesn't mean you're afraid. Sometimes it means you're refusing to live someone else's dream." He exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. "I don't even know what my own dream is anymore," he admitted. Mina rested her elbows on the railing. "Then maybe this is the part where you listen for it." Their eyes held. The air shifted. Not passion. Not yet. Something quieter. More dangerous. Connection. Inside, laughter erupted, breaking the moment. Mina smiled and stepped back. "We should go back before they start making theories." He smiled too. "That would be unfortunate." They rejoined the group, but something had changed. They gravitated toward each other naturally, sat closer, shared small jokes, quiet glances. When the cake was finally cut and candles blown out, Mina closed her eyes again. This time she didn't wish for anything. She simply felt grateful. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Joon-ha found himself standing at the door, hesitating. "I should go," he said. Mina nodded, though a flicker of disappointment crossed her face before she could hide it. "It was nice meeting you," he added. She smiled. Twice. They laughed softly. "Take care, Mina." "You too, Joon-ha." He left, stepping into the night feeling lighter than he had in months. And Mina watched him go, her heart whispering a question she wasn't ready to answer yet. What if this wasn't just coincidence? The house grew quieter after Joon-ha left. Plates were stacked, laughter softened into tired smiles, and the music faded into background noise as family members hugged goodbye. Mina helped Naomi wipe down the kitchen counters, moving automatically while her thoughts stayed stubbornly elsewhere. On the porch, in the way his voice had lowered when he spoke about his grandmother, in the way he had looked at her like she was a calm place in the middle of a storm he didn't know how to escape. "You okay?" Naomi asked, watching her closely. Mina blinked. "Yeah, just tired." Naomi hummed, unconvinced but wise enough not to push. "You can stay tonight if you want." "Thanks," Mina said softly. "I think I'll head home." When she finally slid into her car, the silence felt heavier than before. She rested her forehead briefly against the steering wheel, letting out a slow breath. This was ridiculous. She didn't know him. She didn't need this. And yet, something had shifted. Across town, Joon-ha stood in his hotel room staring out at the city lights. Savannah looked different at night. Quieter, slower, almost forgiving. He loosened his tie and tossed his jacket onto a chair, but the tension in his shoulders refused to leave. Mina, the way she listened, the way she didn't try to fix him, the way she spoke truth without cutting. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, phone heavy in his hand. One unread message. His grandmother. He didn't open it. Instead, he found himself opening Daniel's contact. "Joon-ha, thanks for tonight." The reply came quickly. "Daniel, you needed it. Also, small world, huh?" Joon-ha exhaled a soft laugh. "Joon-ha." "Yeah." "About Mina." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Daniel, careful." Joon-ha stared at the screen. "Joon-ha, I know." But knowing didn't make the pull disappear. The next morning arrived gently, sunlight spilling through Mina's bedroom window. She stretched beneath the covers, then reached instinctively for her phone. No messages. She frowned at herself. What were you expecting? Still, as she went through her morning routine, shower, coffee, quiet music, her thoughts kept drifting back to the night before. To the way Joon-ha had looked when she told him running didn't make him weak. To the way his shoulders had relaxed just slightly. Her phone buzzed suddenly. "Daniel. Daniel. Morning. You free today?" Mina smiled faintly. Her cousin never wasted words. "Mina, depends." "Why?" A pause. "Daniel. Lunch. Just us. And maybe Joon-ha if that's okay." Her heartbeat skipped. Once, sharp and unexpected. She stared at the screen, considering. This was a bad idea, which apparently made it impossible to ignore. Mina, sure. The restaurant was small and tucked away from the tourist crowds. Warm wood tables, soft jazz, sunlight filtering through wide windows. Mina arrived first. When Joon-ha walked in behind Daniel, her breath caught despite herself. He looked different today. No suit, no sharp edges, just dark jeans, a simple shirt, and a quiet confidence that felt less guarded. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. "Mina," Daniel said cheerfully. "Glad you made it." "Hi," she replied, standing. "Hi," Joon-ha said softer. They sat. Conversation flowed easily at first. Work for Daniel, Mina's career goals, Joon-ha's vague references to business overseas. But gradually the world narrowed. Daniel excused himself to take a call, leaving silence behind. Not awkward, charged. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon," Mina admitted. "I hoped," Joon-ha said honestly. That surprised her. "Why?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because you make things quiet." She studied him. You say that like it's rare. It is. Their food arrived, briefly breaking the moment. They ate slowly, talking about small things. Favorite music, places they wanted to travel, moments that had shaped them. And then, without meaning to, they drifted closer to truth. My grandmother called again, Joon-ha said quietly. Mina didn't interrupt. She's coming here, he continued. She wants me back in Korea tomorrow. Mina's chest tightened. And you? I don't know, he admitted. Part of me feels guilty for wanting a life that doesn't revolve around duty. She set her fork down. Guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. He met her gaze. What if I disappoint everyone? She leaned back slightly. What if you disappoint yourself? The question landed hard. Daniel returned then, sensing the shift but saying nothing. After lunch, they walked outside together. The air felt heavier now, like something important had been named. I leave soon, Joon-ha said quietly as they reached the cars. Mina nodded. I know. I don't want this to be another thing I walk away from without understanding, he added. Her heart thudded painfully. Then don't, she said softly. Their eyes held. The space between them felt fragile, filled with want, fear, timing, and reality. Joon-ha reached out, stopping just short of touching her hand. May I see you again? He asked. Mina swallowed. Yes, she said. And in that moment, neither of them realized how much that single word would change everything. Mina didn't sleep well that night. She drifted in and out of shallow dreams, her mind replaying moments she hadn't given permission to linger. The sound of Joon-ha's voice when he said he hoped to see her again. The way his hand had hovered near hers as if he were afraid to cross an invisible line. The weight behind his eyes when he spoke about disappointing everyone. When morning came, it felt too bright for how unsettled she felt inside. She lay still for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of her apartment. 25 years old, independent, grounded. She had worked hard to build a life that didn't depend on emotional chaos. And yet here she was, thinking about a man who lived on the other side of the world. Get a grip, she whispered to herself. She rolled out of bed, made coffee, and tried to focus on normal things. Emails, errands, plans for the week. But her phone sat on the counter like a loaded question. It buzzed around noon. Unknown number. Her heart jumped before she could stop it. Joon-ha, Daniel gave me your number. I hope that's okay. She smiled despite herself. Mina, it's okay. A pause followed, just long enough for anticipation to creep in. Joon-ha, would you like to walk? No expectations, just air. She considered it. This was how lines blurred, not with dramatic gestures, but with simple invitations that felt safe. Mina, yes. They met at a quiet park near the river, the afternoon sun filtering through tall trees. The air smelled like grass and water, calm and grounding. Joon-ha arrived first, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense until he saw her. When their eyes met, something eased between them. Hi, he said. Hi. They began walking side by side, their steps naturally matching pace. For a while, neither spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like both of them were adjusting to the idea that this, whatever this was, existed. I leave tomorrow, Joon-ha said eventually. Mina nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. I know. I didn't want to disappear, he continued. Not without saying that meeting you wasn't an accident to me. Her chest tightened slightly. It felt intentional. He glanced at her. Exactly. They stopped near the water's edge. I've spent my life doing what's expected, he said quietly. I don't regret working hard. I regret never asking myself what I wanted outside of that. Mina turned to face him fully now. And what do you want? He hesitated, then met her eyes. Honesty, choice, connection. She swallowed. That scares people, she said softly. It scares me, he admitted. The wind stirred her curls, and without thinking, he lifted a hand, then stopped himself. She noticed. Instead of pulling away, she said gently, you don't have to be careful with me. That was all the permission he needed. His fingers brushed hers, tentative, respectful, electric. The touch wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was deliberate, and it sent a quiet shock through both of them. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "Neither do I," Mina replied. "But I know pretending this didn't matter would be lying." Their fingers intertwined slowly. No kiss. No promises. Just truth. That evening, reality returned sharply. Joon-ha's grandmother called again, this time on a video call. She sat in her office, her face appearing boldly on Joon-ha's laptop screen. Her posture flawless, her gaze calculating. "You look distracted," she observed. "I've been thinking," he replied evenly. "That worries me," she said. "I'm not coming back yet," he said calmly. "And I'm not agreeing to the engagement." Her eyes hardened. "You are choosing uncertainty over legacy." "I'm choosing myself," he said. Silence stretched. "You will regret this," she warned. "Maybe," he said, "but at least it will be my regret. We will see how long your courage lasts." When she ended the call, Joon-ha felt the weight of consequences settle fully onto his shoulders. But for the first time, he didn't feel crushed by it. Later that night, Mina sat on her balcony, phone in hand. "Joon-ha," she called again. Mina exhaled slowly. "Mina, how are you holding up?" Joon-ha, scared, but steady. She smiled faintly. "Mina, that's enough for now." A pause. "Joon-ha, I don't want distance to erase what we started." Her fingers hovered over the screen. "Mina, then don't let it." The dots appeared, disappeared. Then, "Joon-ha, may I come see you before I leave?" Her heart thudded. "Mina, yes." They stood in her doorway later that night, the air heavy with everything unspoken. No family, no expectations, just two people standing at the edge of something real. "I won't promise you anything I can't keep," he said quietly. "I don't need promises," she replied. "Just honesty." He nodded. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. Their kiss was soft at first, uncertain, reverent, then deeper, not rushed, not desperate, just right. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads resting together, Mina whispered, "This complicates everything." He smiled against her skin. It already did. And as he walked away into the night, both of them knew the truth they hadn't said out loud yet. Leaving would be easy. Coming back would be harder. But staying away might be impossible. The airport felt colder than it should have. Joon-ha stood near the departure gate, hands in his coat pockets, watching travelers move with purpose while his own chest felt heavy and unsettled. The announcement for boarding echoed overhead, polite and impersonal, as if it didn't understand that some goodbyes rearranged the inside of a person. His phone buzzed. "Mina." He didn't hesitate. "Mina, did you make it through security?" He smiled faintly. "Joon-ha, barely." I almost turned around twice. There was a pause before her reply came. "Mina, I wouldn't have blamed you." He stared out at the runway, planes lined up like choices waiting to be made. "Joon-ha, I would have blamed myself." When boarding was called, he sent one last message. "Joon-ha, I'll call when I land. Mina, I'll be awake." That simple promise followed him onto the plane, settled beside him like a quiet anchor. Korea welcomed him back with efficiency and expectation. Meetings stacked on meetings, assistants with clipboards. His grandmother's presence felt everywhere. In the schedules, the glances, the subtle pressure tightening around him like a tailored suit he hadn't asked to wear. At night, when the city finally quieted, Mina became his refuge. Video calls stretched late, crossing time zones with ease they hadn't expected. Sometimes they talked for hours about childhood memories, favorite foods, fears they rarely admitted out loud. Other times they simply stayed on the line, doing their own things, comforted by shared silence. "You're really there," Mina said once, her voice soft through the screen. "So are you," he replied. Distance didn't dull the connection. It sharpened it. For Mina, life continued. Work deadlines, family dinners, errands, but something fundamental had shifted. She caught herself smiling at her phone, checking the time difference instinctively, planning her evenings around his mornings. Her cousin Daniel noticed. "You're glowing," he teased one afternoon. She rolled her eyes. "Mind your business." He laughed. "You're doing something brave." That word stuck with her. Brave. Loving someone complicated took courage. Loving someone far away required faith. The pressure on Joon-ha intensified. His grandmother summoned him one evening, her expression calm but calculating. "The engagement announcement will proceed," she said. "With or without you." He stood straighter. "Then it will be without me." Her eyes narrowed. "You are risking everything." "I know," he replied evenly. "But I found something worth risking for." She studied him carefully. "A woman." "Yes. Does she know what you stand to lose?" He didn't hesitate. "She knows who I am when I'm not performing." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps even doubt. But it passed quickly. "We will discuss this again," she said. He bowed respectfully and left, heart pounding but resolve intact. Weeks passed, then months. What began as uncertainty grew into something steadier. They argued sometimes about time, about fear, about the reality neither wanted to ignore. But they always came back to honesty. "One night," Mina said quietly, "I don't want to be a secret forever." He nodded. "You won't be. Your world isn't gentle," she added. "I don't want a gentle world," he replied. "I want a true one." That night, after they hung up, Joon-ha booked a flight. Mina was in her kitchen when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, time stuttered. Joon-ha stood there, slightly breathless, eyes bright, holding a small overnight bag. "I missed you," he said simply. Her breath left her in a rush. "You flew across the world for that?" "For us," he corrected. She stepped aside without a word. The kiss they shared wasn't tentative this time. It was certain. Later, wrapped together in quiet, Mina rested her head against his chest. "This doesn't fix everything," she murmured. "I know," he replied. "But it proves something." "What?" "That love doesn't disappear when things get hard." Outside, the world continued, complicated, demanding, imperfect. Inside, two hearts chose each other again. And somewhere between distance and defiance, they both understood. Love wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to walk forward anyway. Mina knew something was wrong the moment Joon-ha stopped smiling. They were sitting at her dining table, half-finished breakfast between them, sunlight spilling lazily through the window. It should have been an easy morning, one of those rare pockets of peace, but his shoulders were tense, his attention fractured. "My grandmother is coming," he said finally. Mina set her cup down slowly. "To Georgia?" "Yes." Her heartbeat quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "When?" "Today." That did it. The silence that followed wasn't panic. It was gravity. The kind that pulled everything down to its truth. "She knows about me," Mina said, not as a question. "Yes. And she doesn't approve." He met her eyes. "She doesn't understand yet." Mina leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. She had grown up watching strong women navigate difficult men, difficult systems, difficult expectations. She wasn't naive. "She's not just meeting me," Mina said quietly. "She's measuring me." Joon-ha reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I won't let her hurt you." Mina squeezed his fingers gently. "You can't protect me from everything." "I know," he said, "but I can stand with you." That mattered more than he realized. The hotel lounge was immaculate. Polished marble floors, quiet elegance. The kind of place that spoke in money rather than words. Mina felt it immediately. She wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, nothing apologetic. Her posture was straight, her expression calm. If she was being evaluated, she would not shrink for it. Joon-ha's grandmother sat waiting. Madam Kim was smaller than Mina expected. Refined, silver-haired, eyes sharp as glass. She rose slowly as they approached, her gaze landing on Mina with unsettling precision. "So," she said, her English flawless, "you are Mina." Mina inclined her head politely. "Yes, ma'am." Madame Kim studied her for a long moment, then gestured for them to sit. "You are younger than I imagined," she observed. "So were you once," Mina replied gently. Joon-ha's breath caught. Madame Kim's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You are bold," she said. "Only honest," Mina replied. They sat. Madame Kim folded her hands neatly. "My grandson has responsibilities." "I understand," Mina said. "Do you?" Her gaze sharpened. "He carries a legacy, company, hundreds of families who depend on his decisions." Mina nodded. "That's a heavy burden. You are not part of that world." "No," Mina agreed. "But I am part of his." Silence. Joon-ha watched them both, heart pounding. Madame Kim leaned back slightly. "Do you love him?" Mina didn't hesitate. "Yes." "And if loving him costs him everything?" Mina inhaled slowly. "Then that is his choice, not mine." The words landed hard. "I will not chain him to me," Mina continued. "And I will not beg him to choose me. I love him enough to let him decide who he wants to be." Something shifted. Madame Kim's eyes softened, just barely. "You are not afraid," she observed. "I am," Mina said honestly. "But fear doesn't decide my values." Madame Kim turned to Joon-ha. "You have changed." He nodded. "Because someone saw me as a man before seeing me as an asset." The older woman was quiet for a long time. Finally, she stood. "This is not over," she said. "But it is different." She looked at Mina once more. "You are stronger than you appear." Mina met her gaze. "So are you." Madame Kim left without another word. Later that night, Mina and Joon-ha sat on the couch, exhaustion settling into their bones. "That could have gone worse," Mina said softly. He laughed quietly. "You were incredible." She leaned into him. "So were you." He kissed the top of her head. "Whatever happens next, I don't regret this." "Neither do I," she replied. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, two lives stood at a crossroads, no longer naive, no longer hidden. Love had stepped into the light, and it was strong enough to stay. The days after the meeting felt strangely suspended in time. No calls from Madame Kim. No threats. No ultimatums. The silence was worse than confrontation. Joon-ha returned to Korea with a heaviness in his chest that refused to lift. Mina watched him pack with quiet understanding, helping fold his shirts, pretending not to notice the way his hands trembled slightly when he zipped his suitcase. "Call me when you land," she said, resting her forehead briefly against his chest. "I will," he promised, kissing her hair. "Every day if you let me." She smiled faintly. "I'll hold you to that." At the airport, they didn't linger. Long goodbyes made things feel final, and neither of them was ready for that. In Seoul, reality wasted no time. Joon-ha stepped into meetings that felt colder, sharper, more political than ever. Board members watched him closely, weighing loyalty against risk. Rumors moved faster than truth. His grandmother summoned him on the third night. "You embarrassed the family," she said bluntly. He stood tall. "I was honest." "You invited scrutiny," she countered. "Investors are uneasy." "Then reassure them with results," he replied. "Not my personal life." She studied him with narrowed eyes. "You would gamble everything on one woman." He shook his head. "I'm choosing integrity." "That is expensive," she warned. "So is living a lie," he replied calmly. Back in Georgia, Mina tried to return to routine. She succeeded on the surface. Work, family dinners, casual laughter. But underneath, uncertainty lived quietly in her chest. Every unknown number made her heart race. Every missed call tightened the knot. Daniel checked in often. "He's holding his ground," he told her one evening. "That's not easy where he comes from." "I know," Mina said softly. "What about you?" Daniel asked. "Are you ready for what choosing him might mean?" Mina looked out the window, the sky streaked with sunset. "I didn't choose him because it was easy," she said. "I chose him because it was true." Weeks passed. Then came the announcement. Joon-ha stood in his office when the press release crossed his desk. Kim Global announces leadership restructuring. His name was absent. Not removed, reassigned. A symbolic demotion. A message. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. This was the cost. He called Mina immediately. "They're pushing me aside," he said quietly. Not fully, but enough to make a point. Mina closed her eyes, pain flaring. "Are you okay?" "I think so," he said. "But I need to ask you something difficult." Her heart clenched. "Ask." "If I walk away," he said carefully, "if I choose a different path, smaller, quieter, uncertain, will you still want me?" Tears pricked her eyes. "I didn't fall in love with your title," she said firmly. "I fell in love with the man who stood in a parking lot apologizing over a broken cake." He laughed softly, emotion thickening his voice. "I needed to hear that." The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Madam Kim arrived at his office unannounced, her presence commanding immediate privacy. "You are prepared to lose everything," she said, studying him. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "And the woman?" she asked. "She knows what that means?" "She does." Madam Kim sighed, a sound heavy with years of power and sacrifice. "You remind me of your grandfather," she said quietly. "He loved one woman, and I punished him for it." Joon-ha froze. "I mistook control for protection," she continued, "and in doing so, I lost him emotionally long before I lost him to death." She met his eyes. "I will not repeat that mistake." His breath caught. "The engagement is cancelled," she said. "The board will resist, but they will follow." Relief crashed through him, fierce, overwhelming. "And Mina?" he asked. Madam Kim's gaze softened. "Bring her to Korea. Let them see the woman who taught you courage." Mina stood in her kitchen when the call came. "I'm coming back," Joon-ha said, voice bright with disbelief and joy. "And I want you with me." She laughed through tears. "Korea?" "Yes, if you're willing." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." They met at the airport weeks later, this time without fear hanging between them. As they embraced, Mina whispered, "We chose this." Joon-ha kissed her forehead. "And I choose you again." Love had asked its question. They had answered. And now, together, they stepped forward. Into uncertainty, into possibility, into a future no one else had written for them. The first thing Mina noticed about Seoul was the speed. Everything moved with purpose. People walking briskly, cars gliding through traffic with precision, conversations flowing in clipped rhythms she didn't yet understand. The city buzzed with life, ambition, and expectation, all layered beneath neon lights and glass towers that reflected a future constantly chasing itself. Joon-ha watched her carefully as they exited the airport, concern flickering across his face. "Are you overwhelmed?" he asked. "A little," Mina admitted honestly, "but in a curious way." He smiled faintly. "That's good. Curiosity survives where fear doesn't." The car ride into the city was quiet, not because they had nothing to say, but because they were absorbing the weight of where they were. This wasn't just a visit. This was a statement. The apartment Joon-ha had arranged for them overlooked the Han River, modern and understated. No excessive luxury. No unnecessary displays. Mina noticed that too. "You chose this," she said, setting her bag down. "Not something your grandmother picked." "Yes," he replied. "I wanted you to see me as I live now, not as they present me." She smiled softly. "I like it." That night, jet lag kept Mina awake. She stood by the window, watching the city glow beneath her. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Somewhere closer, laughter floated upward. This place didn't know her. Yet, the introductions began the next morning. Executives, assistants, board members, people who smiled politely while measuring her worth with their eyes. Mina felt it immediately. Not hostility. Assessment. She stood beside Joon-ha during meetings, silent but observant, dressed simply, posture straight, gaze steady. One woman whispered too loudly, "She's different." Mina met her eyes calmly. "Yes," she said, I am. The woman flushed. Joon-ha squeezed Mina's hand under the table, pride warming his chest. Lunch with Madam Kim came 3 days later. The restaurant was traditional, quiet, steeped in history. Madam Kim studied Mina as she poured tea with steady hands. You are adjusting quickly, she observed. I'm listening, Mina replied. That helps. Madam Kim nodded approvingly. Many mistake silence for weakness. I don't, Mina said gently. They ate in thoughtful quiet before Madam Kim spoke again. You have changed my grandson, she said. I didn't mean to, Mina replied honestly. He changed himself. Pause. That answer pleases me, Madam Kim said. For the first time, Mina sensed something close to acceptance. But acceptance from one woman didn't mean acceptance from the world. Online speculation erupted within weeks. Articles, photos, headlines that dissected Mina's background, her race, her profession, all under the guise of curiosity. Joon-ha was furious. I can make this stop, he said one night. I can shut it down. Mina shook her head. No. If we hide, they'll think I don't belong here. You don't owe anyone proof, he argued. I know, she replied. But I owe myself presence. The next public event was a gala. Mina wore a dress that didn't apologize. Elegant, confident, undeniably her. Cameras flashed as they entered together. Questions flew. Miss Johnson, how do you feel dating a Korean billionaire? She smiled calmly. I feel respected. The room went quiet. Joon-ha's chest swelled with pride. Later that night, as they stood alone on the balcony, Mina exhaled. That was exhausting. You were extraordinary, he said. She leaned into him. I don't need to conquer this world. I just need to stand in it. He kissed her temple. You already are. Below them, Seoul pulsed with life. Curious, judgmental, brilliant, demanding. And Mina stood within it, unbroken, not as someone's accessory, but as herself. Mina woke before the city. Seoul at dawn was different. Quieter, softer, almost vulnerable. From the window, the Han River reflected pale morning light, the water moving steadily, purposefully, as if it already knew where it was going. She liked that. She slipped out of bed carefully so she wouldn't wake Joon-ha and padded toward the kitchen, wrapping herself in one of his shirts. As the kettle heated, she leaned against the counter, letting her thoughts wander. She had crossed an ocean for love, but she hadn't crossed it to disappear. That truth had been whispering to her since the day she arrived. Joon-ha noticed the shift before she said anything. It was in the way she asked questions about the city, about opportunities, about what life looked like beyond events and boardrooms. It was in the way she lingered over her laptop in the evenings, researching quietly, thoughtfully. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, he finally asked, "What are you planning?" Mina looked up from her screen, surprised. Then she smiled. "I'm thinking," she said, "about what I want here." He nodded slowly. "Tell me." "I don't want to just be present," she said carefully. "I want to be purposeful." He leaned back, studying her. "That doesn't threaten me." She laughed softly. "I know, but it threatens the narrative." He reached for her hand. "Let it." The opportunity came unexpectedly. An international nonprofit Mina had admired for years, focused on community development and cross-cultural partnerships, was hosting a regional forum in Seoul. Mina attended quietly, not as Joon-ha Kim's partner, but as herself. No cameras, no introductions, just conversations. She spoke with organizers, listened more than she talked, shared her experiences working across communities back home. She didn't oversell herself. She didn't shrink either. 2 days later, she received an email. "We'd love to explore a consulting collaboration with you." She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she smiled. The backlash was subtle but present. Whispers in rooms she wasn't in. Curiosity framed as concern. "She doesn't need to work. Is this appropriate? Why now?" Mina heard enough to understand. At a private dinner, an executive's wife smiled too sweetly and asked, "Don't you find it difficult?" building a career when your partner already has everything? Mina took a sip of water before replying. I find it liberating, she said calmly. Love should expand you, not replace you. The table went quiet. Later that night, Joon-ha held her close. I'm sorry, he said. They're not used to women like you. She smiled against his chest. Neither was I, until I became one. Madam Kim requested another meeting. This time Mina went alone. The older woman studied her thoughtfully over tea. You are creating a life here. Yes, Mina replied. With or without approval. Madam Kim's lips curved faintly. Good. Dependency weakens even the strongest love. Mina met her gaze, surprised. You taught him to choose himself, Madam Kim continued. Now you are doing the same. Mina inclined her head. With respect. Madam Kim nodded once. You may stay. It wasn't permission. It was acknowledgement. That night, Mina stood beside Joon-ha on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly before them. I accepted the role, she said softly. He smiled. I never doubted you would. She turned to him. Are you okay with this? He took her hands. I'm proud of you. Her chest warmed. This world still scares me sometimes, she admitted. He brushed his thumb across her knuckles. Then we'll be brave separately. And together. She leaned into him, feeling steady. She hadn't lost herself in loving him. She had found more of herself. And a soul pulsed beneath them. Demanding, watching, alive. Mina stood tall within it, carrying her own name, her own purpose, her own future. Love hadn't erased her edges. It had sharpened them. The invitation arrived on heavy cream paper, embossed with gold lettering that spoke of tradition and power before the words were even read. Kim Global Annual Legacy Summit. Mina turned the card over slowly, her reflection faint in its polished surface. This wasn't just an event. This was a line. Joon-ha watched her from across the room, already knowing what she was thinking. They want to see if I'm serious, he said quietly. Not about business. About permanence. Mina met his eyes. And are you? The question wasn't accusatory. It was careful. Yes, he said without hesitation. But forever isn't something I want to force on you. She nodded slowly. Then we walk in honest. The summit was held outside Seoul, in a traditional estate restored into a modern conference retreat. The air was crisp, the grounds immaculate, the attendees carefully curated. Mina felt the weight immediately. Eyes followed her. Whispers moved. Assessments sharpened. She stayed steady. Throughout the day, Joon-ha was pulled into meetings, panels, quiet conversations that carried more power than words. Mina attended where she was invited, listened where she wasn't. She noticed who spoke over her, who listened, who watched Joon-ha when she spoke. By evening, exhaustion crept in. She slipped away to the garden, needing space. Joon-ha found her there, standing beneath a lantern-lit tree, her arms folded loosely around herself. Too much? He asked gently. Not too much, she replied. Just revealing. He stepped closer. About them. About us, she corrected. He waited. I love you, Mina said softly, but I won't spend my life proving that I belong. His chest tightened. I would never ask that of you. I know, she said, but your world might. He reached for her hands. Then we change the world we keep. She searched his face. And if that means leaving parts of it behind? He exhaled slowly. Then we leave. The confrontation came that night. Madam Kim called them into a private room, her expression unreadable. You are considering restructuring the company's future, she said to Joon-ha. Decentralizing power. Reducing visibility. Yes, he replied. So I can live. And you? She asked Mina. What do you want? Mina met her gaze steadily. A life where love doesn't require erasure. Silence stretched. Madam Kim looked between them. You are asking for a future that does not exist in our traditions, she said. Then we'll build one, Mina replied. The older woman sighed. A sound worn smooth by years of compromise. You may lose influence, she warned Joon-ha. I've already found what matters, he said. Madam Kim nodded slowly. Then this is my final test. She stood. If you walk this path together, you do so without expecting protection from legacy. Joon-ha straightened. We understand. Madam Kim looked at Mina one last time. Do not break him. Mina's voice was quiet, unshakable. I won't. And I won't let him break himself. Madam Kim left them alone. Later, under the night sky, Mina and Joon-ha stood hand in hand. This changes everything, Mina whispered. Yes, he said. But it makes it ours. She leaned into him. I'm not afraid of forever. I'm afraid of disappearing inside it. He kissed her forehead. You won't. I promise. She looked up at him. Then let's choose each other, not because we're expected to, but because we want to. He smiled softly. Every day. Above them, lanterns flickered, casting warm light over uncertain ground. Forever wasn't guaranteed, but it was finally honestly possible. The morning after the summit felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just still, like the pause after a storm when the air hasn't yet decided what it will become. Mina woke first. She lay on her side, watching Joon-ha sleep, his face softer than the world ever allowed him to be. In sleep, there was no CEO, no heir, no grandson bound by legacy. Only a man who had chosen love knowing exactly what it might cost him. She pressed her palm lightly against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath it. This was real, and real things required courage beyond romance. They didn't rush back to Seoul. Instead, Joon-ha drove them east, away from the city, toward the coast. No security detail, no assistance, just the road, the ocean, and the unfamiliar comfort of anonymity. They stopped at a small seaside town, the kind where time slowed without apology. Mina walked barefoot along the shore, the hem of her dress brushing her calves as waves kissed the sand. I can breathe here, she said. Joon-ha watched her, hands in his pockets. So can I. They sat on a weathered bench overlooking the water, sharing street food wrapped in paper, laughing when the wind stole napkins from their hands. For the first time in weeks, they weren't being watched, or measured, or tested. That night, in a modest guest house, the conversation they had been circling finally arrived. What happens now? Mina asked softly. Joon-ha didn't answer immediately. He moved closer, resting his forehead against hers. I step back, he said, from what they expect. Not from responsibility, but from the performance of it. She searched his eyes. And if they don't forgive you? I'm done asking permission, he replied. Her throat tightened. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. He cupped her face gently. You're the reason I know what everything actually is. Silence fell between them, heavy but honest. I won't stay if I have to disappear, Mina said quietly. You won't, he said firmly. You'll build. I'll build. Side by side. She nodded, emotion rising in her chest. Then I stay. The announcement came weeks later. Not dramatic. Not defiant. Just clear. Joon-ha released a statement restructuring his role. Less public, more strategic. The company would remain powerful, but his life would no longer be its centerpiece. Speculation exploded. So did criticism. But Mina noticed something else. Relief. In him. In herself. She expanded her work with the nonprofit, creating bridges between communities in Georgia and Seoul, hosting dialogues that centered people instead of profit. She wasn't introduced as his partner. She was introduced by name. Madam Kim didn't call for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was quieter. You have chosen a difficult road, she said. Yes, Joon-ha replied. A pause. Is she still with you? Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then perhaps legacy is not what I thought it was, Madam Kim said. It wasn't approval, but it was peace. On Mina's next birthday, they returned to Georgia. No chaos, no shattered cake, just laughter, family, music spilling into warm night air. Her cousin raised a glass. To unexpected meetings in parking lots. Everyone laughed. Mina caught Joon-ha's eye across the room. He smiled. Later, under the stars, she rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how close we came to never knowing?" she asked. He kissed her hair. "Every day," she smiled. "I'm glad we collided. So am I." Their love wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. But it was chosen. And in choosing each other, they had rewritten everything they were told they had to be. Love, Mina learned, changed shape. It didn't fade, but it softened in places, deepened in others. It learned rhythm. It learned patience. Georgia in late summer felt like memory and possibility braided together. Cicadas hummed in the evenings. Warm air wrapped itself around laughter. And Mina felt grounded in a way she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Joon-ha noticed it too. The way she moved more slowly here. The way she smiled without bracing herself. The way she belonged without explanation. They stayed longer than planned. No headlines followed them here. No boardrooms waited at the door. Just mornings that began with sunlight and ended with shared silence that didn't need filling. One afternoon, they drove with no destination in mind, windows down, music low. They stopped at a quiet park near the edge of town. The kind where children played and elders sat on benches feeding birds. They walked hand in hand. Not as a billionaire heir and a woman scrutinized by the world. Just as two people in love. That evening, Joon-ha grew unusually quiet. Mina noticed while they cooked together. His movements precise but distant. His answers thoughtful but brief. "You're somewhere else," she said gently. He smiled faintly. "I'm trying to be brave." She turned fully toward him. "About what?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set the knife down, wiped his hands and faced her. "I've lived my whole life reacting," he said. "To expectations, to fear, to rebellion." She listened, heart steady. "I don't want to react anymore," he continued. "I want to choose." Her breath caught, just slightly. "I don't want to propose because it's time," he said. "Or because anyone expects it. Or because love should look a certain way." He reached for her hands. "I want to ask you because I know who I am with you. And I like that man." Mina's eyes softened. "But I also know you," he said. "You won't say yes just because you love me." She smiled through the emotion rising in her chest. "No, I won't. And I wouldn't want you to." Days passed. He didn't rush. That was the most surprising part. There was no dramatic gesture. No ring suddenly produced. No moment designed for spectacle. Instead, there were conversations. About children or not. About where home would be. About what they were willing to sacrifice and what they were not. One night, lying side by side beneath a ceiling fan humming softly, Mina spoke into the dark. "If we do this," she said, "we don't disappear into each other. We expand," he replied immediately. She smiled. "Good." The proposal came quietly, on a morning that felt like any other. They returned to the mall parking lot, the same one. Mina laughed when she realized where they were. "You're joking." "I'm not," he said softly. They stood near the spot where everything had shattered once. Cake, wine, certainty. "I almost lost everything that day," he said, "and somehow gained everything." He took a small box from his pocket, but didn't open it yet. "Mina Johnson," he said, voice steady but eyes full. "I don't want a love that cages you. I don't want a marriage that erases either of us." He paused. "I want a partnership where we meet as whole people, again and again." He opened the box, not a massive stone, not a symbol of status. Just elegant, thoughtful, intentional. "Will you choose me?" he asked. "Not because it's forever, but because today, tomorrow, and every day after you still want to?" Tears slid freely down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "I choose you." They didn't announce it immediately. They told family first. Slowly, carefully. Madam Kim listened in silence, then surprised them both. "Then marry him as an equal," she said to Mina. "And never let him forget it." Mina bowed her head respectfully. "I won't." That night, alone together, Mina rested her head on Joon-ha's chest. "Do you think love ever stops asking things of us?" she asked. He kissed her hair. I think it asks better questions over time. She smiled. Their future wasn't loud, but it was honest. And that, more than legacy, more than wealth, more than expectation, was the greatest inheritance either of them would ever claim. Planning a wedding, Mina quickly learned, was less about flowers and dates and more about boundaries. The first list arrived by email. Venues in Seoul. Guest counts in the hundreds. Ceremonial requirements attached to generations of expectation. Mina stared at the screen for a long time before closing her laptop. Joon-ha found her on the balcony later that evening, Georgia dusk melting into night around them. You saw it, he said. Yes, she replied calmly. And I felt myself disappearing. He leaned against the railing beside her. Then it's wrong. She turned to him, surprised. You didn't even ask what I want. He smiled faintly. I already know. The pressure didn't come all at once. Came in careful suggestions. Aunties who spoke softly but meant loudly. Executives who framed tradition as respect. Advisors who warned that optics matter. One woman said kindly, You're marrying into something much bigger than love. Mina smiled politely. Then it should be strong enough to survive honesty. The woman didn't know how to respond. The hardest conversation came with Madam Kim. They sat across from each other in a quiet room filled with morning light. Tea steamed gently between them. You have refused many things, Madam Kim said. Yes, Mina replied. I have. Do you know what you are refusing? Mina met her gaze. Control disguised as tradition. Silence followed. You are bold, Madam Kim said finally. I am careful, Mina corrected. With my life. Madam Kim studied her for a long moment. You will not wear the family hanbok? She asked. I will, Mina said. But I will also wear my mother's fabric. My story will be visible. Madam Kim exhaled slowly. You are asking for balance where none existed. Then let us begin it, Mina said gently. For the first time, Madam Kim smiled, not with approval but with recognition. You are not easy, she said. Mina smiled back. Neither is your grandson. Joon-ha faced his own battles. Board members warned him. Friends questioned him. One man said bluntly, You're giving up too much. Joon-ha answered calmly, No, I'm choosing differently. At night, when the noise faded, he and Mina lay together, fingers intertwined. Are you tired? He asked once. She nodded honestly, but not regretful. He kissed her knuckles. Neither am I. They chose a wedding that confused everyone. 2 locations. 2 cultures. No hierarchy. A ceremony in Georgia beneath open sky. A celebration in Korea rooted in respect, not obedience. No performance of ownership. No erasure of self. Just intention. The criticism was loud. The support was quieter but stronger. Mina's mother held her hands one evening and said, You didn't shrink for love. That's how I know it's real. Joon-ha's grandmother watched from a distance, saying little, but intervening when lines were crossed. Enough, Madam Kim said once. This is not a conquest. People listened. One night, days before the first ceremony, Mina stood alone in front of the mirror. She didn't see a bride defined by sacrifice. She saw a woman who had kept herself. Joon-ha came up behind her, resting his chin on her shoulder. Still with me? He asked softly. She smiled at their reflection. Always, as myself. He kissed her gently. That's all I ever wanted. Love hadn't won because it was loud. It had won because it was clear. And as the final details settled into place, Mina and Joon-ha stood on the edge of a future that no longer asked them to choose between love and selfhood. They had already answered. Together, the wedding did not feel like an ending, felt like a return. Under the wide Georgia sky, where cicadas hummed and warm wind carried laughter, Mina stood barefoot on the grass, her dress simple, elegant, and undeniably hers. Her mother's fabric was sewn carefully into the lining, unseen by most, but felt by her with every breath. Joon-ha waited for her without armor. No titles, no legacy, no expectation. just a man who had learned how to choose. When Mina walked toward him, the world seemed to quiet, as if even time understood this moment did not need noise. Their vows were not poetic. They were honest. "I promise to walk beside you," Mina said, voice steady. "Never ahead of you, never behind you. I promise not to lose myself for love, and not to ask you to lose yourself for me." Joon-ha swallowed, emotion heavy in his chest. "I promise to protect your freedom as fiercely as I protect my heart," he replied. "I promise to choose you every day, not because I must, but because I want to." They exchanged rings that carried no history, only intention. When they kissed, it wasn't for the crowd. It was for the two people who had collided in a parking lot and refused to let the world decide what that collision meant. Weeks later, in Korea, they honored tradition without surrendering to it. Mina wore hanbok woven with colors from her heritage. She bowed with respect, not submission. Madame Kim watched from her seat, her expression unreadable, until Mina caught the faintest nod. Approval, finally, without control. Life settled into something real. Not perfect, not quiet, but honest. Mina continued her work, building bridges between communities, standing firmly in her name. Joon-ha led differently now, less visible, more intentional, finally at peace. Some people whispered, others watched, many learned. On an ordinary evening, years later, Mina and Joon-ha stood on their balcony, city lights glowing below. "Do you ever think about that day?" Mina asked. "The parking lot?" He smiled. "Yes." He laughed softly. "Every time I see cake." She leaned into him. "We broke everything that day." "No," he said, kissing her hair. "We dropped what didn't matter." They stood together not because the world demanded it, but because they chose it. Every single day. Sometimes, love doesn't begin with fireworks. Sometimes, it begins with broken glass, spilled wine, and a moment that feels like a mistake. But Mina and Joon-ha learned that not every collision is meant to be avoided. Some are meant to awaken you, to pull you out of the lives others planned for you and into the one you were brave enough to choose. They didn't win because they were rich. They didn't last because they were perfect. They lasted because neither of them disappeared. Love didn't cage them. It didn't shrink them. It met them whole. And in choosing each other, they discovered the quiet truth the world rarely tells you. The right love doesn't ask you to lose yourself. It asks you to stand. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.